Our video is going to be about type 1 diabetes and how it affects the human body to give you a better understanding on how this disease works. When not treated properly, it can lead up to very serious problems.
I mourn the loss of spontaneity, the ability to run out to the ice cream truck, because you got to check your blood sugar. Molly, if it's too high, you can't run out to the ice cream truck, or you can go get an ice cream, but you have to save it for later until we bring your blood sugar back into a normal range.
If my brother just goes to get something to eat and like a cookie or something, I'm just like, can I have one? And no, you can't.
Type 1 diabetes. This is a disorder in which a mutation occurs in the DNA. A sign of this mutation is when glucose levels of a person are high. This portion of the DNA codes the production of a protein called proinsulin. The protein proinsulin is responsible for the production of insulin. When the proteins are unable to perform their job, the glucose in the body is unable to be used. This results in diet non-adherence, which is a more prominent risk factor for missing insulin injections in type 1 patients. To gain a better understanding of how this happens, let's first look at how proteins are made. An individual who has type 1 diabetes contains a mutation on chromosome 6. Exactly how a mutation at this location adds to the patient's risk is not clear, although a gene maps the region of a chromosome 6 that also has genes for antigens, the molecule that normally tells the immune system not to attack itself. When protein synthesis occurs, this causes the amino acids to change. Higher amounts of protein in meals increases the amount of insulin needed by about 50%. This is a problem since the pancreas cannot make enough insulin, which means that glucose can't get into cells where it's needed.
RNA polymerase is what is responsible for the unzipping of DNA and puts RNA nucleotides into the right place, for example, C with G and A with T. But instead of thymine, RNA uses uracil. RNA types and uses. RNA to get the protein code out of the nucleus. They are read 3 bases at a time. tRNA transfer the right amino acid to the ribosome to build the protein. rRNA read the mRNA to the cytoplasm is a part of the ribosome which goes on to make the protein.
These symptoms are mostly caused at a cellular level.
Neuropathy or nerve damage is a common complication of diabetes. Neuropathy can affect any part of the nervous system, including the nerves that control autonomic or involuntary functions, such as digestion. Pancreatic cells are affected by type 1 diabetes, which usually develops due to an autoimmune disorder. This is when the body's immune system behaves inappropriately and starts seeing one of its own tissues as foreign. In the case of type 1 diabetes, the islet cells of the pancreas that produce insulin are seen as the enemy by mistake. This happens because the T cells in our bodies mistake the proteins on our pancreatic cells to be covered in bacteria, but it's actually not. But the T cells panic and attack all the pancreatic cells, effectively killing them, and they can't make insulin anymore. The photoreceptor cells in the eye are affected by diabetes when the blood vessels in the eye are clogged. This can cause short-term problems that include blurred vision, but more seriously, some long-term complications are glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, macular edema, and cataracts. Diabetes can affect the keratinocytes, melanocytes, Merkel, and Langerhans cells. These cells are an integral part of the human skin, and they all undergo cellular senescence when cultured in vitro. It is very likely that cellular senescence of these different cell types contributes to overall deterioration seen in aging skin.
How was your family before Molly was diagnosed with diabetes?
I don't really remember what our family was like before diabetes. It's just always there.
When did you find out you had diabetes?
I was diagnosed when I was 2.
I picked her up one afternoon. The teacher commented that Molly sure was cranky and cried a lot today. And she said she was thirsty.
Did you think she had diabetes after the incident at school?
Did I think she had diabetes? I didn't even know what diabetes was. It didn't occur to me. I called Molly's godmother, who actually happens to be a type 1 diabetic herself. And she said, and I quote, "Run, don't walk to the doctor. Molly has diabetes."
Where did you go?
We immediately went to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. and received 2 days of training in reading food labels, meal planning, how to count carbohydrates when you're out at a restaurant. How do you go about, counting carbohydrates and so forth. So the diabetes educators at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta were really amazing resources for us because we knew nothing.
How often do you check your blood?
When I wake up, I check my blood. Before I go to school, I usually check my blood. Before we have snack, I check my blood. At the end of the day, I check my blood again. And I do a shot every night. It's just kind of a part of my life now.
Luckily for Molly, there are treatments that aims to keep a normal blood sugar level. Some of those treatments are insulin therapy, dieting, exercise. There's also the choice of adding insulin artificially, such as this right here. Some of those methods are through syringes, pens, and new pancreas systems. There are many different types of insulin to meet the patient's needs. The first type of insulin is fast-acting insulin, which starts working in 15 minutes, peaks at 1 hour, and can last up to 2 to 4 hours. Types of these insulins are Humulin and Novolin. Acting insulin reaches the bloodstream in 2 to 4 hours. It can peak at 12 hours and end at 18 hours. Some types of this insulin are Novolog, Homolog, and Apidra. Lastly, we have our third insulin, which is long-lasting insulin. It can take up to 24 hours to reach the bloodstream, but can last up to 48. Some types of this insulin is Blasagir and Levemir. Molly has to deal with all of this on a day-to-day basis to figure out which one she needs to use.
These Punnett square charts are used to show all possible outcomes of genetic cross and to predict the probability of the child getting type 1 diabetes.
Thank you for watching our video about diabetes. This work was done by Dhruv, Brennan, and Camden.
There are many different types of insulin that meets the patient needs. Some would be G-Fuel.
Hey, yo, what? What are you doing? What is that?
Some of the
Nice.
Some of the types of intermediate acting insulin could last up to intermediate acting insulin. I didn't say that right. Right. Soffit. Intermediate. Now, one of the best ways to take insulin is unscrew the cap and just drink it.